The handball law, they are making up game by game because it's ambiguous. It's an ambiguous law, and it is so open to interpretation, it is scary.
Handball, the rule every parent and spectator on the sideline thinks they know. And yet, the rule that causes the most debate amongst fans and pundits.
Absolutely shocked. I don't think it's handball.
A rule so arbitrary that not even VAR could help referees make handball decisions consistently. A rule so dubious that EA Sports chooses to ignore it altogether on its default settings in FIFA. Today, I attempt the impossible, to settle the handball debate once and for all. First, we'll go through the obvious. The laws of the game say handball is the deliberate act of a player making contact with the ball with the hand or arm. The goalkeeper is exempt from this rule inside their penalty area, but has the same restrictions as any other player outside their box. A ball off the shoulder is not handball. Sounds pretty straightforward, but the word deliberate is where things get tricky.
How can you read into someone's mindset the fact that that person has deliberately attempted to handle the ball?
Exactly. The laws of the game say the following must be considered: the movement of the hand towards the ball, the distance or proximity between the opponent and the ball, and the initial position of the arm. You may have heard the phrase natural position used a lot when talking about handball. Obviously, the arms are involved when running, jumping, slide tackling, or simply keeping balance. So I don't think it's fair to expect players to tuck their arms behind their back whenever there's a possibility of the ball hitting their arm. We should consider movement first and foremost. Did the hand or arm move towards the ball? Is it reasonable for a movement already in motion to be stopped to prevent the ball hitting the hand? For example, a player who is mid-jump. If the arm moves towards the ball and the movement could have been prevented, then it is likely a handball offense. Secondly, you have to consider proximity. The acceptable distance between the ball and the player is obviously dependent on the speed of the ball. The ball can move faster than any player, and the referee has to judge if there was a reasonable amount of time for the player to move his arm away from the ball. The further the player is from the ball initially, the more likely handball will be called. After considering movement and proximity, we should take a look at the initial position. If there is no movement towards the ball and very close proximity, handball can still be called. The initial position of the arm and hand must not give the player an unfair advantage in terms of covering more space than is natural. Handball can be especially difficult to call when there's a bad touch or deflection involved. For these situations, consider how much influence the player had in the preceding play. For example, if a player slide tackles to block an opponent's shot and the ball hits their arm unexpectedly, handball should not be called. However, if they have a bad touch to control the ball and the ball bounces up to hit their arm, perhaps a handball should be called. Truthfully, there needs to be more detail in the way this rule is written within the laws of the game. Judging intent is one of the most difficult things for referees, and there needs to be a more objective way of calling handball. In the meantime, use the guidelines of movement, proximity, initial position, and the preceding play, and accept that there will be a level of subjectivity to this rule. Don't harass the referees, and try not to lose your head over it at your local pickup game or youth soccer tournament.
I saw in the TV, it was a handball.
It was a decision. Was goal. Doesn't matter.